and welcome to another garden book review. Today's book is Planting the Natural Garden by Piet, Oudolf and Henk Gerritsen, edited by Noel Kingsbury. If those names sound familiar to you, a book I previously reviewed called Planting a New Perspective features several of those gentlemen, and they are some of the preeminent and most well-known gardeners advocating for a more naturalistic rather than a very rigid and ornamental planting. This book was published in 2019 by Timber Press out of Portland, Oregon, a publisher known for their gardening books. It is at a hefty 287 pages, which is why I would recommend getting a hardcover copy of this book. I don't even know if it's in paperback, but you'll want this in hardcover. Just as a summary, this is the perfect companion book to the previously mentioned Planting a New Perspective. And it's a great reference book to keep on your shelf, especially if you're diving into the world of naturalistic planting. You'll see why in a moment. So, as we go through, I will talk about content and design interchangeably. In my articles on my blog, you'll be able to see them split up more evenly. But as we go through the book, it's really about looking at it holistically. And so I'm going to be talking about it holistically. So, whereas Planting a New Perspective is more about the history and the philosophy of naturalistic planting and garden design, this book has more practical information. There's a giant section of plant descriptions, followed by a section entitled Uses, which is groups of plants by various conditions, such as blazing, dry sunny, or tranquility, the calming atmosphere that some plants exude. So we will look at that in a moment. Let's talk about this cover. I love this cover. I think it's gorgeous. Now, this is a great use of more of a landscape, garden as a whole photo with text around it. We will see other books where the text feels sort of just plopped on top of the image and it feels very cluttered. But this specifically, I love that the plants are the focus here in the middle. There is a space up here where they could put the title. There's also the names of the authors down here where it's a lot of green. And so this is all a very balanced looking cover. Very simple spine. And the back cover is also very simple, but I think well done. It's a continuation of the photo from the cover. And then we have our copy to get you to buy it. I love this. This is, as soon as I opened this up when I got it. I ordered it online. I got it in the mail. But as soon as I opened it, I knew I would love this book. That's such great end paper. Now, a lot of publishers don't pay any mind to that. You know, it is more expensive to do this. But doing this, having one of Piet's actual garden plans in his handwriting, in color, really brings this book to another level. I love this. I think it's beautiful. It really it shows you what he's thinking about. It shows you his mind and his sight when he's planning a garden. So I love it. All right, we got the title page. Lovely, just very simple. Our table of contents, more photos. And I do want to point out that almost all of the photos, save for a few, are done by Piet himself. That was another thing that he has always been big on, is not just growing and note-taking, but also taking a lot of photos. And photos throughout the year, not just when things are in bloom, but really showing you how all 4 seasons can look in a garden. Because it's not just about planting for the summer or your time of year when most of the blooms are out. It's about planting for all the seasons that you have. What's the interest that you can create in all of those seasons? What is the pollinator and bird-friendly plants that you can add to your garden for all 4 seasons? So, I love this. This is another great photo. It's gorgeous. There's so many gorgeous photos in this book. But let's go. So, we have part 1, plant descriptions. So these are going to be all kinds of perennials, as you can see. You have your explanation of the symbols. We'll go to a page with. Alrighty, so here's an example of a perennials page or a plant description page, because he does this for the different all the different categories. So these are all different kinds of asters. So you have the pictures of not all of them that he mentions, because the aster family is enormous. So many. But these are some of the more well-known ones, more natural ones. And so you can see he puts them all in alphabetical order. Gives you, do they need sun, part shade, how tall do they get? And as you saw on that previous page, the flowering time is the month. I'm not sure why he numbered the months. It's sort of interesting. But that's the flowering time. It's not zone, because he's writing from a European perspective, not an American United States perspective. So he's not using the USDA grow zones. They have their own, the Royal Horticulture Society has their own system for that. So these numbers are like bloom time. So that would be July through October. I'm not sure why he does it like that, but that's fine. Here's another page. The previous page has more asters. As you can see, there's a lot of asters in my favorite color. Probably why I chose the page subconsciously, because I love purple. All right. Here's another page, Echinacea, which is obviously a great pollinator-friendly plant. You might know it as the coneflower. Very daisy-like. Sometimes they have this sort of drooping habit. Sometimes they have a more perky, upright habit. And they are great because they give you interest all 4 seasons. So if you leave them up, which I highly recommend you do, because you will be helping to feed some birds and some butterflies and insects, because you'll give them a place to hide out over the winter. And you can see down here, I'll pick this up and you can see it better. So that is, in the wintertime, what they would look like. And I love that he includes photos like that of what these plants and what these gardens look like in the wintertime, because people don't think about gardening in the winter very much. And so this is a really great way of getting you used to what a garden can look like in the winter. You know, it's not spectacular colors and showy blooms. It is habitat. It is a place for those things that we need in order to survive. It gives them a place to live. Okay? Because no matter how much you hate insects, I don't know why you're in gardening if you hate insects, but There are pests and then there are insects, beneficials, but we need those. They're the things that pollinate the flowers, that help our vegetables grow, and we need those. And so we need to do what we can to take care of them. One of the things that we can do is this, leaving things around in the wintertime. All right, we have a section on ornamental grasses, which a lot of people don't think about. But if you look at this photo, notice how it's a lot of grasses throughout here. And then you have these pops of color and these different habitats too. So this is a more kind of spiky upright. These pink almost look kind of like billowy clouds. And then you have the very sort of like snowy like texture of the grasses. So it's not just about color, right? It's about texture. It's about shape. It's about vertical versus horizontal. So there's all kinds of things. Once you really get into gardening, and not just planting rows of vegetables, which that's a whole other subject, and I will be reviewing books on that as well. We shouldn't be just doing rows of vegetables, just like we shouldn't be just doing rows of flowers. Okay? That's not how it works in nature. We shouldn't be doing that in our gardens too. So, but these are ornamental grasses. Ornamental grasses are great. They're another thing that really, not only are they a great place for insects, pollinator friendly, moths, butterflies, birds, but they're also great for the soil. So something like carex, like sedges. Sedges are grasses. They can be a little spiky. And a lot of them can take some light shade or even some full shade. They're not fussy about their soil. It doesn't need to be like this perfect, rich, beautiful soil. It can be sort of crummy soil. But sedges help transform that soil. They help protect that soil, especially if you are dealing with something like a slope or some sort of uneven ground. They can really help with erosion prevention. So just another great thing to think about. I don't think enough people really incorporate ornamental grasses into their landscaping ideas. So part 2, uses. This is where I really think this is interesting because I like the way he thinks about groups of plants. And sort of wrapping your head around how to think about groups of plants. Alrighty, so we'll go through and take a look at some. So this is blazing. So he's in the Netherlands. A lot of people have arid, dry ecosystem or ground, or maybe just a section of your garden where it gets a lot of sun for 8, 12 hours a day, just really blazing hot sun. And so he talks about, in each of these sections, he talks about how to garden for that section, what to think about, and then also gives you a list of species that would do really well in that type of environment. So, move that over just a little bit. There we go. So, I think it's great. It's a nice way of like getting you to sort of think about plants in groups, not just individual plants. So, lush, fertile, moisture retentive soil, the kind of soil everybody sort of thinks is like, oh, that's the ideal soil, right? And it is, but there's also a lot of our native plants here in North America, in the U.S., that don't need that rich soil. They're perfectly fine dealing with other types of soil. And so, yes, lush is great. It's not the only type. So airy, this is talking about the architecture of a plant, the structure of it, as it's growing up, as it's blooming, and when the blooms die back. What does that all look like? What are the stems looking like and the branches looking like? So airy is all about sort of these light, fluffy plants. Tranquility. So tranquility, There's a lot of different, you can add an element of tranquility in the garden. You can create a tranquility or healing garden. And that's a lot to do with like therapeutic horticulture. Using the garden space as a way to promote healing, both physical and mental. And so incorporating some of these plants into your garden. And it's not just about smell. It is about smell. And here's some combinations that he shows. But it's not just about smell, right? It is also about the touch. A very famous plant that everybody loves to touch are lamb's ears. They have that very soft, silvery looking leaf, and they're just lovely to touch. But if we think about all of our senses, so what we see, what we smell, which is what we normally think of as a garden, but also touch, taste, those are equally as important. And taste, there's plenty of flowers that are edible. We think of herbs, and herbs growing along flowers is a great idea. Exuberant. I love this. So exuberant is just like big, showy things. Exuberant combinations. I love that. I love it. So these are either very colorful things, or, you think about color combinations and color groups. And it's just, I love that. I love the name of that one. Silvery. This is another type of foliage I think people should give a consideration to. So we're thinking, like the lamb's ears again, or like this. Look at how that's not like that. Normally you think of that lush green color when we're thinking about gardens. But this kind of silvery color, especially when you're planting it underneath trees or in a shadier part of your garden, really can pop. The green kind of fades into the background, but this silvery color can really pop in a shady area. And so thinking about that shady, that silvery kind of color in your garden, it's an understated pop. And then grassy, right? We need grass, not grass, but those ornamental grasses. And he talks all about the ornamental grass garden. And it's huge. It really, like, ornamental grasses are something, and silvery are something I think a lot of us don't think about when we think about gardening. Gloomy. So gloomy is more of when we think about going into fall and winter. So these are plants with beautiful autumn colors. There's a lot of great flowers, and there's a lot of great vegetation that looks spectacular. Not just trees, but there's a lot of things that look spectacular in the autumn. And then, here we go. There's a bigger photo of that, of the garden in winter. And so these are plants with beautiful winter silhouettes. So we're thinking about more of like the structure of the plant rather than the big, colorful, showy blooms, right? What does that structure look like? What is the architecture of that plant? And how does that look in the winter? Talks about autumn. More lists. Gives a whole section about structure. And some of my favorite, the monarda, which is bee balm. It's also called bergamot. It has so many names, but it is a native in North America. And pollinators love it. Butterflies, hummingbirds love this plant. So if you want to draw more hummingbirds into your backyard, I highly recommend monarda. So these are different plants with structure. Scatter plants. So scatter plants, it's more like if you want kind of like a meadowy sort of feel to your plant or to your garden. And then here's some other lists. See, this is why this is so, it's information heavy, but it's in a way that it's bite size. And you can say like, oh, I really want plants for lazy gardeners. That's me. And so you can see like, oh, these are going to be things that don't take a lot of, they don't take a lot of intensive time. They can kind of hold their own against weeds. Sometimes they get a little spready so that they prevent weeds from happening too. And with any plant, it doesn't go from kind of aggressive and spreading to invasive in your area. And also see if it's something that, like, say if you have deer. Now, I don't have deer, but I have a lot of rabbits. And I can't plant a hosta because they eat every single hosta unless I basically wrap it in barbed wire. And what's the point of having a hosta wrapped in barbed wire? So, I don't plant hosta. I plant other things in the shadier parts to that, like, the rabbits just aren't as interested in. So these are ones that maybe need some staking. These are plants that get tall but don't need any staking. Spreaders, like that he calls it imperialistic plants. Weavers and climbers. Climbers are great. I personally, clematis is a huge one. A one that I love is a hyacinth bean vine. It's sort of this purpley maroony color, and they have these really cool pods that come out in the fall, and it's a great plant. I planted in a container, in my bigger container that has a trellis, and it just scrambles all over it and makes lovely shade, and it's really nice. Rabbit resistant, butterfly and bee plants. Coastal plants. So if you live in a coastal area, which, has its own demands. And then planting plans and combinations. So this is worth, this kind of stuff I think is worth the price of admission to this book. So this is showing you a rooftop garden in the US. And Piet has done a lot of spectacular gardens. Like the High Line in New York City. He has done gardens in Chicago, in Philadelphia. He's done very famous gardens all over the world. But this is a simple rooftop garden in the U.S. Shows you what plants he chose, because a rooftop is going to have, right, a lot of sun, a lot of heat, not a lot of shade. And so what can I plant up there that's going to do okay? And what plants will work well together to give me a lush feel on a rooftop. And so you can see nothing's square. Nothing is rows in place. He does little groups of 3. So a group of 3, groups of 5 are a very common thing. You'll see those a lot. But he gives us all kinds of different plans, which is lovely. And Henk too. Henk gives us some plans too. So there's our blazing, there's our gloomy, thinking about maybe how we want to garden with those kinds of ideas in mind. And then these are great combinations of perennials that work well together, that benefit each other, and encourage more pollinators and beneficial insects that will come by and, fight off the pests. Combinations with ornamental grasses. There's even plants per square meter, which is a helpful thing. A lot of people I know tend to plant a little bit closer together. And then we have index, and it's an index of plant names, which is huge. Because if I'm looking for a specific kind of plant, I need to know, you'll see that there's common names, and then there is also scientific names. So if I'm looking, I want to know about geraniums, and there's actually a wild geranium, which is lovely, is not like the varieties that you see in a nursery. And so, like, if I want to know more about wild geranium, I could find that in here. And wild ginger is another one. Okay, so then he has a list of nurseries: Canada, US, and the UK. Metric conversions. I love that he includes a literature list. Now, this man has run his own nurseries. He has been working with plants for decades and decades. Still adds a literature list. Now, some of them are his. You'll see his name in there. But also, if you really want to know more about grasses or hostas or specific books, gives you a list of books that he recommends. And I love that. And then we have our copyright page, which, lovely picture. And then our beautiful end paper. And then we're at our back cover. I highly recommend this book, especially if you are interested in more naturalistic planting. You go to a wildflower meadow and you're just taken away by all the beautiful colors and the airy structures and the grasses. And if you love that and wish you could have that at home, I cannot recommend this book more. Absolutely. Find this book. Find it at the library. Find it online. I will have books, any books that I can find on bookshop.org. I will have a link. I will put a link in the description, and so that you can buy them off of bookshop.org, or you can go to thriftbooks.com and see if it's there, or visit your local library. Can't recommend libraries enough. I love the libraries. This is where a lot of the books in this series started from. But this one, definitely a keeper. I bought this one specifically because I knew I would want this on my bookshelf, and I have referred back to it so many times since I've gotten it. Can't recommend it more. So thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, as everybody says. But yeah, and tune in next time for more gardening and more beautiful, beautiful books. Bye.